Okay, this section is on salts and the effect of salts on plant growth effectively, because that's what ends up being the problem. Also water penetration. So if we have high salt content, we already talked about in the water holding capacity operations that and the intake rates, that salts are going to slow down intake because of the fact that the salts want to tie up water particles. They like to bond to them, and so they're going to slow the process of getting water down through the profile. It's also going to affect the ability of water to pull, or excuse me, plants to pull water from the soil, because the salts also want to hold on to that. Now most plants will not absorb salts. There are a handful of plants that they're now working with agriculturally that actually they can put in the field that will grow and absorb salts and actually pull salts into the plants, and when they harvest it, they're removing salt off the field. But that is a very rare critter. None of the commercial agricultural crops we're going to be dealing with in the Northwest do that. And we basically have three kinds of salts that we have to be concerned about. The first one is what they call a saline condition. We call it white alkali around here. If you ever drive down toward Wallula in that Tushy area, along the roadside, in places you'll see white granular or even powdery looking substance sitting on top of the soil. Those are alkali salts that have come up to the surface. It's basically like table salt. If you were to taste it, you would think it was table salt, because a lot of it is simply table salt, NaCl.
So if you ingested a lot of that big amount, you might...
Oh, yeah, if you ingested a lot of that, your blood pressure probably goes sky high, huh? That's what they say, isn't it? A lot of salt drive your... Yeah, I don't... It's not something you're going to want to ingest a lot of, but you know, it's going to affect your body just like any salt affects your body.
Kind of greedy.
Yeah, and it might be a little funny tasting, be some other additives in there besides pure table salt, but that's the basic premise of what you're dealing with. Now, that is a pretty readily leachable form of the salt. One way to get rid of that is simply put water on the ground. Over a period of time, it will dissolve in the water, and it will leach with the wetted front as you're driving the water down in the profile. So the solution most often is to leach this stuff out of the ground. They actually also will skim it off the surface. If you get a big layer on the surface, they go in and they will just skin off that top ½ an inch of soil surface and actually just remove it physically from the property. It's one way to do it. And how that happens is when you dry it out totally, it will also work with the drying front up to the surface, and you'll get a large load of salts right at the surface. See, it stays dissolved as long as possible. It's the first thing that gets dissolved in the soil is the salts. So they move up and down with the moisture in the moisture front, the wetted front in the profile. And so if we have, and lots of irrigated acres have been leached and literally have driven the salts clear out of the profile. Now where do they end up? Well, they generally end up in the stream and down to the river and onto the ocean. You know, or a drain ditch into a stream onto an ocean, or a place like the Great Salt Lake where you have a closed basin where there's no place else for it to go. An inland ocean, effectively. And that's the movement of salts out of a region. We don't have a lot of salts in the Pacific Northwest. There are areas, but it's not a prevalent problem. A different story, the Colorado River Basin's a whole different world. And that is one salty river. And a problem that they have down in Arizona and California with the quality of the Colorado River is that they're adding salts to the ground every time they irrigate. So they have to use the process of leaching to help remove salts that they've actually added. Part of the water they irrigate with has to be used for leaching the salts they're bringing into the ground with the water they're irrigating with. It's kind of like the old catch-22. And water can get so contaminated with salts that you no longer can afford to irrigate with it. So it can be a major problem. from the water supply, not just from what's already there in the soil. Where do they come from in the soil?